The earliest work was, muscle power. It was your ability to build things using nothing but your own muscles. We didn't have farming, so we had to go hunt and gather for our food. And humans were very good at that because we were able to coordinate with other humans and therefore quickly became the apex predator on the planet. Fast forward to farming, and most of the world were farmers. So that led to a pretty controlled and centralized life around the village, around the farm and your family. The thing to really keep in mind is that for most of human history, work was horrible. People didn't understand quite why people would leave the farms in droves to come to cities to do industrial work. Well, again, look at the incentives. Farm life was brutal and hard, and people naturally thought that the being able to work inside for just like 8 or 10 hours, wow, that was like a luxury to them. At the turn of the 20th century, 75% of Americans were farmers. Then as the Industrial Revolution marched forth, that changed dramatically, seemingly overnight. For the period, say, post-World War II to about the mid-1960s, particularly in America, we looked at that suddenly as the norm. There were unions that negotiated wages with the management of the company they worked for. People stayed with the same company for most of their career. They got the gold watch and they had a mandatory retirement age, but they also got a pension, not a 401k, which in this country is determined by how much money the worker puts in. In the old format, it was a fixed pension. I look at that period as an anomaly, not a norm. Between 1946 and, say, 1968, America bestrode the world, but that's because we wiped out all of our industrial competitors in World War II. In the mid-1950s, America produced something like 86% of all of the cars sold in the world. And it wasn't because they couldn't build good cars elsewhere. The Japanese and Germans have certainly shown us that. It was that they didn't have the factories. We bombed them into rubble. And so in America in particular, we started just sort of looking at that as the normal way that things were going to be. And that wasn't true at all. It was an anomaly. And there's the website, What the F Happened in 1971. Well, one of the things that happened is the Japanese brought their manufacturing fully online. And guess what? They build beautiful cars that are reliable and were more in tune with the energy problem of the 1970s. And so you had kind of fat and happy American automakers getting caught as if it came out of nowhere. That's the same idea of the Great Reshuffle. The Great Reshuffle posits that a lot of people are fat and happy using an old playbook in media, in publishing, in finance, all over the place. Those models are collapsing. Why are they collapsing? Because we are bringing online tools and technology that is, almost magical in its ability to leverage smaller teams, smaller companies. Steve Jobs famously said that with his first computer, he was building a bicycle for the mind. Well, with AI and the internet, that's a rocket ship for our mind and for human creativity. And given the fact that we have right now, not in the future, not expected, but right now, we have the ability where I fully suspect that somewhere in the world we will have a billion-dollar corporation with one employee. We have made such huge strides in automation. You can essentially have a situation where much of the, what I would call cut and paste work, goes away. You can automate the boring parts of your job. You're seeing the adoption of this across sectors. Knowledge workers are probably going to be the most impacted by this. But if you're keeping up with the physical embodied robots that they are making that have AI chips running them, they're getting incredibly good at things like moving boxes from point A to point B. You're able to essentially get this sort of exponential leverage using the platforms and the tools. Distribution, great example. You can have a company whose distribution is the World Wide Web, the internet. And so I also think that particularly AI is going to supercharge our creativity and our ability to innovate. Everyone's always afraid, well, the AI will do this or the AI will do that. I don't look at it that way at all. I think that what we're going to see is this so-called centaur model, which is man-machine. That combination will give humans such a boost in terms of their ability to pretty much pursue anything they want to do. Now, as part of that, the whole idea of the company that you work for 30 years to get your gold watch and your pension is disappearing. And you can understand why. Just as an example, you see all of the big companies trying to get their workers back to the office. And why isn't that happening? Well, because people during the period where they were working from home realized, oh, I really don't like commuting 2.5 hours to the office. And more importantly, they demonstrated that they could become very productive working from anywhere. So, for example, O'Shaughnessy Ventures, we have colleagues and teammates all around the world. And the way we're structured is also very different. Just because you work at OSV, that doesn't preclude you from doing other things that you want to do. And, I believe that what we're seeing the Great Reshuffle doing is creating a lot of more opportunities and options for people. Young people in particular, if you're exceedingly good with tech and you have like 2 or 3 things that you love to do, you're now in a position where you can in fact do that. So I think that a lot of people get scared because they want the certainty of that job that's going to get them the gold watch. But we'll see that broken away as well, simply because those types of companies will get put out of business by far more efficient firms where the capital structure, the cost structure of the firm is dramatically lower. One of the things that O'Shaughnessy Ventures is going to do with its Infinite Books division we were talking about earlier. We're going to give the authors of those books 70% after costs are recovered of the revenue of their book. People, when they hear that, they're like, how can you do that? Well, we can do it because the tools have been with us in many cases for the last decade at least. And it's a classic example of an industry that doesn't want to change, but can change. And so if you've got a free economy, you're definitely going to see people come in and improve the underlying business model. Another thing we're going to do there is we're going to have dashboards for all the authors so they can actually see where their books are selling, and a variety of additional sort of AI agents to help them plan their podcast appearances and or their Substacks, etc. I think that cities are going to see potentially tumultuous changes. I'll use my local New York City as an example. The entire area of Midtown is where all of the offices migrated to because it was close to both train stations, etc. Well, my wife's a photographer, a street photographer in New York, and she's like, Midtown's kind of a ghost town now because so many people are not going to the office at all. And then even the ones who are going to the office, the joke in New York is that Thursdays are the new Friday. Everyone thinks, oh my God, that's horrible. Oh my gosh, like what's going to happen? Well, I flip that on its head and think, How cool would it be if Midtown becomes a mixed-use sort of space? If they convert some of the disused offices to apartments that are far more affordable for younger people? How about having old office buildings turning into multi-use things for movie theaters, for galleries, for all of that sort of stuff? So everything has a life cycle. And the idea that we were always going to go to an office is kind of ridiculous. Offices, I was just reading last night, the modern office didn't really start coming into being until like the turn of the 20th century. In 1850 Britain, offices, or quotes, business establishments, why did they use that term? Because you lived there too. Because you had a kitchen there, because it was all the same place, and your colleagues in your business enterprise lived there too. So the notion of an office that's external to where we live, where we raise our children, etc., is a really new concept. Constant change is, just part of the package. Cities will compete on, are they fun to live in? Literally, I could see New York turning huge parts of the city into bike and passenger only areas. And, that won't come quickly. But we were talking at lunch about, the High Line. It's a perfect example. The High Line is a disused subway or railway track. Now, you could tear it down, right? Or you could turn it into a beautiful green walkway where literally hundreds of thousands of people go and walk and take in the sights, and it's integrated into things like the Whitney Museum. And so cities are going to have to get creative. Even though remote work works very, very well, there is something special if you're in a certain type of career where you want to live in a city where there's other people with great ideas, right? And so I used to always joke that New York wasn't really a city, New York was an idea. Cities tended to draw the smartest people, and you see that in all countries, not just America. India, the UK, everywhere. There is that kind of magnet city that's a Snelling point for the best and the brightest of that area. And internationally, are governments going to have to compete with one another? Well, in the area of business, I would say certainly, yes. Look at what happened with Ireland. When Ireland did the more reasonable corporate tax structure, every single American company at least, has their headquarters in Europe in Ireland. And so you'll see, I think, quite a bit of that type of competition emerging. And, it's going to be a kind of a, not necessarily winner take all, but you're going to see certain countries get sort of the lion's share of businesses locating there, the more favorable they are to the way things are moving as opposed to the way things were. If you're going to talk about it in terms of the United States, the red states versus the blue states, they're already competing. And they're competing around things like government services, tax rates, crime rates, all of that sort of thing. But finally, if you want to be like, say, you're a nature lover, and you don't want to have to face the super high costs of living in a New York or a San Francisco, and you're a knowledge worker, you can go off the grid. You can get a satellite internet connection. And so I think that time and space have collapsed, so to speak. And because of that, you'll be able to have more, not less, choices about where you choose to live and work. So I think the good news is that people have never had so many tools at their disposal at relatively reasonable cost to prepare themselves for this new world. You can take, God knows, thousands of courses on anything in particular that you're interested in right online. I would heavily suggest that people take writing courses. One of the reasons why we are underwriting the scholarships at Rite of Passage with David Perel is we want to demonstrate and help out in areas that we think are going to be beneficial to people moving into this new environment. Oddly, I think writing has gone from nice to have to need to have. And the beautiful part of that is you don't have to go to the Iowa Writing School. You can start with David and then go on to other courses and other associations. Same sort of thing in the hard sciences. Now, of course, you're probably going to need a degree from an institution, but that's not going to or should stop you from learning all you can online. All of these resources are there for everyone. That's the thing that I like to stress. I always try to find things to root for as opposed to against. And I think that we're coming into maybe a golden era for creativity and innovation, because all of the drudge work, all of the things that occupied hours, if not days, can be done in the blink of an eye now by a machine. And so that frees us to spend more time thinking creatively, to thinking of solutions, to experimenting with solutions. The other thing you want to keep moving into this new environment is your proof of work. You know, you got hired because of your proof of work. Many, many jobs, especially on the knowledge working side, you definitely have the ability to have a long proof of work that will become, in essence, your calling card. Let's say we're making a movie. We are making a movie, and we're going to use this very methodology. People who want to make a documentary we're going to be able to find where they are. We're going to be able to show them the benefits of working on this project. But as the maker of the movie, you've got to present it differently. So what we're going to do is everyone who has a hand in making the movie is going to own a piece of that movie. And so if we sell that movie, probably to a streamer, we're going to bypass, for the most part, theater distribution and go right to the streamers. But the key is, if you worked on the movie, you've got a piece of it. And so what we're trying to do is inculcate the owner mentality as opposed to an employee mentality. And I think that if you could start thinking that way about your own career, you are the owner of your skill set. You are the owner of the things that you can do better than others. And so we'll even see, I would think, things like teachers. I think that within 10 years, the best teachers in the world will be making millions of dollars a year because they'll start their own corporations, they'll work with AI so that the AI can get to know the student better, but they'll use the teacher who's very dynamic, who's all of these things. So you're going to see professions that once were very modestly paid, such as teachers, you're going to be able to see some breakout superstars there. And because of the infinite bandwidth that we have on the internet, there's no more just single one game winner take all, right? Power laws exist everywhere, and I don't think we're going to get rid of them. However, now we have all these little niches that you can conquer. And so people are going to be able to do things that are more in line with their passion. And if I were younger, I'd be super excited because you're not going to be bound by the same old 9 to 5 that maybe your mom and dad were, certainly than your grandparents were. I think that we are really heading into kind of a golden age for people being able to really pursue the things that really they love or are passionate about.